Visions of India, evolving the higher self. Uniting East and West culturally and spiritually by an exchange of their finest distinctive features is an ideal for which Paramahansa Yogananda was noted throughout his life's work. The following article is one of the early commendations of his spiritual motherland and what India had to offer to and receive from the West. Through the passage of many decades has wrought changes in circumstances and conditions in India and throughout the world. The underlying premise of this vision of India in the 1920s remains both valid and valuable as an overview of East-West unity. The central theme of India's spiritual message to the world is the importance of the unfoldment of the higher self, which inspired Paramahansaji's words in the second half of this article. India is an epitome of the world, a land of diverse climates, religions, commerce, arts, peoples, scenery, stages of civilization, and languages. Her civilization dates back many thousands of years. Her great seers, prophets, and rulers left records behind them that prove the great antiquity of the Aryan civilization in India. Many Western travelers visit India, see a few of the street magicians, sword swallowers, or snake charmers, and think that is what India has to offer. But these men do not represent the true India. The real life and secret of India's vitality is her spiritual culture. From time immemorial, which has made her the motherland of religions. Although the West can teach India much about methods of sanitation, business, and development of resources. And although India needs business missionaries like Henry Ford and Thomas Edison, yet the Western lands too are thirsty, consciously or unconsciously, for the practical spiritual lessons in which India has specialized for centuries. In Western cities, science has progressed so far that the physical man is usually well taken care of, fed and clothed and sheltered. Yet physical and material comfort without mental and spiritual peace and solace is not enough. As the spiritual model of all religions, India has been the unproclaimed reformer, the grand inspirer of human minds and souls. Her greatest and richest legacy to mankind has been the techniques for the scientific spiritual culture of man, discovered and handed down through the centuries by her saints and seers. India is a land of mystery, but of mystery that reveals itself to the sympathetic inquirer and seeker. India has the grandest and highest mountains in the world, the Himalayas. Darjeeling in the north is the Switzerland of India. The unique ruins of ancient castles and spacious palaces of princes in Delhi, the vast extent of the Ganges, made sacred through the centuries by the meditation near its banks of many God-realized saints, the sun-gilded teeth of the Himalayan mountain ridges, the ancient places of pilgrimage and the caves of meditation where yogis and swamis saw the faggots of ignorance set ablaze with the wisdom of God. The Taj Mahal at Agra, and the finest dream of architecture ever materialized in marble to symbolize the ideal of human love. The dark forests and jungles where the lordly tigers roam. The blueness of the Indian skies and the bright sunshine. The sumptuous varieties of oriental fruits and vegetables. The multifarious types of people all tend to make India different, fascinating, romantic, never to be forgotten. A land of great contrasts. India is a land of great contrasts, untold riches, and utmost poverty. The highest mental purity and coarse, plain living, Rolls Royces and bullock carts, gaily caparisoned elephants, and quaint horse wagons. In the north, we find blue-eyed and blonde-haired Hindus, and in the hotter south, the dark sun-kissed skins of the tropics. From start to finish, India is a land of surprises, of contrasts and extremes. Life becomes prosaic with too much business, too many dull certainties. So in India, one feels that life is a great adventure, an experience of mystery and surprise. India may not have material skyscrapers and all the sometimes spiritually enervating comforts of modern life. She has her faults, as all nations have, but India shelters many unassuming, Christ-like, spiritual skyscrapers who could teach the Western brothers and sisters how to glean the fullest spiritual joy out of any condition of life. Those scientific mystics and seers who have known truth by their own effort and experience, rather than remaining satisfied with ordinary, personally unverified beliefs, can show others how to develop their intuition and bring forth the foundation of peace and satisfaction from beneath the soil of mysteries. Though I have had the advantage of some Western education, yet I feel that in India alone I found the true solution to the mysteries of life. Visions of India's life-giving philosophy. From time immemorial, India's greatest minds have specialized in discovering and understanding the philosophy and meaning of life. One of the oft disputed philosophical questions is whether the goal of human life is service or selfishness. Once I had a big controversy with a European who repeatedly and blindly affirmed that the goal of life was service, while I maintained that it was higher selfishness. I asked him again and again for his reasons in believing in service. But instead of satisfying my discrimination, he kept on reiterating, "Service is the goal of life. It is blasphemous to doubt that." Finding him so dogmatic, I asked him, "Is service the goal of life because the scriptures have declared it?" "Yes," he vehemently replied. "Do you believe everything literally in scripture?" I questioned him. "Do you think Jonah was swallowed by a whale and came out alive after a few days? How do you account for it?" "No, I do not understand how he could do that," my friend said. That was just the point. In order really to know the truth contained in scriptural stories, and in order to understand what is erroneous or right, literal or metaphorical, in scriptural writings, one must use reason, discrimination, and the power of intuitional verification developed through meditation. Many people think that whatever is in print must be correct. In particular, most religionists believe that anything wearing the robe of scriptural authority is absolutely beyond question. But putting on an outward garb cannot make one infallible. Writers of scriptures can also make mistakes, or more traditionally, hide truths in the veils of allegories, metaphors, and parables. In order to know the truth of a given doctrine, we must live it and find out if it works or not. Give it the acid test of experience. Let us get out into the world beyond dogmatism and compare our religious beliefs with the religious experience and realization of true teachers. Let us be iconoclastic of errors within us that need to be abolished. We should not harbor an undigested mass of theology and thus suffer from chronic theological indigestion. The ideal of service, as explained by India's sages. The law of service to others is secondary and corollary to the law of self-interest or self-preservation, which may be termed selfishness. No sane man ever does anything without reason. Religious doctrines and instructions may be based either on blind superstition or on real religious experience. The real reason behind the scriptural injunctions to serve thy fellow men and love thy neighbor as thyself is the law of service to others, is to be obeyed by all devotees who would expand the limits of their own self. No action is performed without reference to a direct or indirect thought that is selfish. The very giving of service is indispensable to receiving service. To serve others by giving financial, mental, or moral help is to find self-satisfaction. If anyone knew beyond doubt that by service to others, his own soul would be lost, would he serve? If Jesus had felt that by sacrificing his life on the altar of man's ignorance, he would displease God, would he have acted as he did? No. He knew that although he had to lose the body, he was gaining his Father's favor and the emancipated rejoicing of his own soul. Such immortal sons of God, and all martyrs and saints, make a good investment. They spend the little mortal body to gain immortal life. Nothing worthwhile is gained without paying a price. Thus, not even the most self-sacrificing act of service to others can be shown to be done without any thought of self. It is logical, therefore, to say that higher selfishness, or acting for the good of the higher self, rather than service to others without thought of self, is the motive of life. Man knows that he must give service to others, or otherwise he cannot rightly receive service from them. All beings are to some degree interdependent. If farmers gave up agricultural work and businessmen gave up their service of transportation and distribution, not even the renunciate could maintain himself. Nowadays, with increased population and wealth, even forests are divided off and owned by big landowners who placard the trees with signs warning the trespasser that he will be prosecuted for coming onto another man's property. So the renunciant cannot logically say, "I will not work or earn my living. I will subsist on the wild fruits of the forest." He must contribute some service for which, in return, he is entitled to receive material sustenance. Hence, service given and received, whether by the businessman who serves in a material way, or by the spiritual renunciant who serves in a divine way, has reference to the goal of a lower or higher selfishness. Three kinds of selfishness: evil, good, and sacred. We should, however, clearly distinguish the three kinds of selfishness: evil, good, and sacred. Evil selfishness is that which actuates a man to seek his own comfort by destroying the comforts of others. To be rich at the cost of others' loss is sin, and is against the interests of the higher individual self of the person who engages in such selfishness. To delight in hurting others' feelings by carping criticism is also evil selfishness. This malignant pleasure is not conducive to any lasting good. true and good selfishness motivates a man to seek his own comfort, prosperity, and happiness by also making others more prosperous and happy. Evil selfishness hides its many destructive teeth of inevitable suffering beneath the apparently innocent looks of temporary comfort assurances. Evil selfishness encloses one in a small circle and shuts out the rest of humanity. Good selfishness takes everybody along with one's own self into the circle of brotherhood. Good selfishness brings many harvests, return services from others, self-expansion, divine sympathy, lasting happiness, and self-realization. Good selfishness should be practiced by the businessman who, by sincere, honest, wholesome, constructive actions and labors, enables himself to look after his own and his family's needs and provides a useful service to others. Such a businessman is far superior to one who thinks and acts only for himself, with no regard for those he serves or those dependent on him for support. The latter is acting against his own best selfish interests, for according to the law of cause and effect, he himself will in time attract suffering. The wealth of many misers is left to relatives, who often squander it on wrong self-indulgences. Such selfishness, in the end, helps neither the giver nor the receiver. To avoid the pitfalls of evil selfishness, one should first follow and establish himself in the pattern of good selfishness, wherein one thinks of his family and those whom he serves as part of him. From that attainment, one can then advance to a practice of sacred selfishness, or unselfishness as ordinary understanding would term it, in which one sees all the universe as himself. Being sacredly selfish. Feeling the sorrows of others and reaching out in order to make them free from further suffering, seeking happiness in the joy of others, constantly trying to remove the wants of increasingly larger numbers of people. This is being sacredly selfish. The man of sacred selfishness counts all his consequent earthly losses as sacrifices deliberately and willingly brought about by himself for others' good and for his own great and ultimate gain. He lives to love his brethren, for he knows they are all children of the one God. His entire selfishness is sacred, for whenever he thinks of himself, he thinks not of the small body and mind of ordinary understanding, but of the needs of all bodies and minds within the range of his acquaintance or influence. His self becomes the self of all. He becomes the mind and feeling of all creatures. So when he does anything for himself, he can only do that which is good for all. He who considers himself as one whose body and limbs consists of all humanity and all creatures certainly finds the universal, all-pervading spirit as himself. He does not act with any expectation, but with his best judgment and intuition, goes on helping himself as the many with health, food, work, success, and spiritual emancipation. Working with good selfishness and sacred selfishness brings one in touch with God, who rests on the altar of all expanding goodness. One who realizes this works conscientiously only to please the ever-directing God of peace within. Excerpts from the book Journey to Self-Realization by Paramahansa Yogananda.